President Trump will meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House next week amid a push by the president to secure a ceasefire and hostage release between Israel and Hamas. The meeting comes as fighting in Gaza continues, with more than 70 people reportedly killed across the enclave yesterday, including at least 30 people in an Israeli airstrike on a beachfront cafe in Gaza City. For more on this, I want to bring in CBS News senior foreign correspondent Debora Patta, who's following developments for us from Jerusalem. Debora, thanks so much for joining us. So the Israel-Iran ceasefire seems to be holding, but where do things stand on securing an end to the violence in Gaza?
Well, Michael, there's no doubt that the U.S. is putting pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to secure that ceasefire. But here is what will be on Netanyahu's mind as he heads to the U.S. next week. He is on trial for corruption and bribery, but proceedings have repeatedly been postponed at his request, including a hearing scheduled for this week. Netanyahu is beholden to his right-wing faction in his ruling coalition to keep him in power. They have threatened to withdraw and collapse his government if he ends the war without defeating Hamas. What defeat actually means has always been somewhat vague, and critics say Netanyahu needs to stay in power to avoid a possible fraud conviction and prison time. And you have also seen President Trump taking it's a very unprecedented step of calling for the Netanyahu trial to be dropped and hinting that he could withdraw American military support, which has been in the tune of around $4 billion for Israel if it does go ahead. That certainly raised eyebrows here. But here's the thing. It's an independent judicial process that neither Trump nor Netanyahu have the power to control, Michael.
And Debora, I want to ask, we have seen day after day of reports of people killed trying to get aid in Gaza. What is the status of the aid situation?
Well, as you say, every day, Palestinians desperate for food have to gamble with death in Gaza. Eyewitnesses have repeatedly told CBS News that people are being killed by IDF gunfire, mostly near aid distribution points that have been set up by the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The GHF says they have no control over what happens there, but since they took over and replaced 400 aid distribution stations with just 4, there have been repeated mass killings as people go to and from these hubs, according to eyewitnesses. Now, the IDF says they're investigating the incidents. They deny deliberately firing on Palestinians, but they do concede that civilians have been harmed and say they're looking into the commands that are given to forces. But today, 130 humanitarian organizations, including some of the world's biggest NGOs, have called for the GHF operations to be shut down, saying the foundation is basically violating all the norms of humanitarian work, including forcing 2 million people into overcrowded and militarized zones where they could be killed. Michael.
All right, Debora Patta in Jerusalem, thank you.